Hello, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be playing some rapid chess, very calm, cool, and collected, with some meditative, relaxing music. I'll be explaining the thought processes, what I'm seeing on the board, the opponent's moves, and maybe a brief analysis after the game. So please, just sit back, relax, and enjoy this worry-free stream. We're going to start with a 10-minute game. Alright, we have our opponent and we have the white pieces. Let's go with 1b3, the Nimzovich-Larsen attack. A hyper-modern opening that's going to focus on attacking the center from the sides of the board. Opponent moves the knight to c6. Let's go ahead and get our knight out. Why not? We may see the pawn push forward here. Curious what the opponent's thinking. Alright, opponent plays very principled, getting the pawns to the center. What's our option? We could move to c4. We could move the d-pawn to d4. Or we could simply move e3, opening up the scope of the bishop. Very nice. Okay, so the opponent decides to counter-attack our knight with their light-squared bishop on g4. Most likely they intend to trade this piece. We could push our h-pawn, or simply defend the knight. Hard to say. Let's go ahead and move the h-pawn. I'm expecting opponent did not take the knight. Very surprising. We could attack the opponent once again. The bishop would retreat to the g6 square, putting pressure across the board on the light square diagonal. Let's go ahead and push a pawn, our c4 pawn, and get a little more space on the board while we figure out how to meet this pawn push. I'm expecting e4. They may develop a knight. They may bring the bishop to the center of the board. What is the opponent thinking here? Okay, opponent moves the pawn to f5, striking into the center. Let's go ahead. Well, I wanted to strike the center with d4, but I see if opponent takes the knight first, then we recapture with queen. They may take with the pawn, and if we were to retake the pawn with the bishop, they would retake the pawn with knight. And then at the very end of the sequence, we could attack the pawn, but our king would be exposed. I'm not sure I like that. So let's just do a calm d3 with the intention of getting a knight to the d2 square. This way we can defend our other knight. Okay. Opponent pushes the pawn, opening our bishop. We could take the pawn. We could retreat the knight. We could push past the pawn and blunder our knight while blocking in our bishop. Let's not do that one. Okay, so pawn comes forward. If we recapture pawn, they will inevitably capture back, and we would lose a central pawn, so I'm not sure this is very good for us with that in mind. I'm going to counter-strike the bishop, because we need to save the queen. There's a deadly pin here. So by striking the bishop, well, I was hoping we would have time to save the knight, but this knight may fall. This knight may fall. We could jump the knight forward. The knight would get attacked. Let's go ahead and move the knight forward. Oh no, this is a blunder. Well, that was quite the mistake. I didn't realize. But that's okay. We're gonna keep pressing on and see if we can find some sort of advantage in this game. Alright, opponent pushes pawn forward. Well, let's take the bishop with check. Opponent has to be careful not to get checkmated. Alright. We have to defend the knight here, so we could move the queen to the g4 square, the h4 square. If we move the queen to the g4 square, it's likely going to be attacked by the knight. Let's just go ahead and retreat, expecting the knight to come out to defend their central pawn. Opponent's pawn on e4. Oh, okay, so intermezzo with check. So we have to decide if we want to take with the queen or move the king. If we recapture with the queen, we would drop our knight. So we have to be very wary of these tactics. If we take with king, there's going to be a check for the queen. So we have to accept if that's the position that we want to go into. And I think that looks just fine. We'll take the pawn. We have 5 minutes on the clock. All right, opponent hops a knight to the center of the board. Very principled move. We could attack the knight. But let's go ahead and just develop a piece, because we need to start getting some pieces into the game. After that, we're going to look to attack the knight and get to the center. The opponent, okay, opponent goes with the queen check. So we have to decide, do we want to move our king back to the square it just came from? Light colored square right next to us. Put the king into the corner. That just feels like it would be very dangerous. We want to move the king to a place where it has no checks. So let's look where the knight can go. The knight can go to these light squares, which would mean it would hit a dark square. So probably best to move the king to a light square. Let's just come back here. 4 minutes to 8 minutes. All right. We get checked by the pawn. And let's just come right back. Nice and calm. All right, opponent's probably looking to castle here. We could take the knight soon. Would probably be a good idea for us. That way we are able to retake the pawn. Well, as I look at it, if we take the pawn, the knight could not take the bishop because it would drop the queen. Alright, so let's just go ahead and retake the pawn. I see no checks. We have to catch back up on time. So we're just going to move a little quicker than otherwise we would. Alright, opponent attacks the knight. If we move the knight, the opponent would take our queen. Well, if we move the knight, there would be an intermezzo. They would take the knight back with their knight, hitting the queen. Well, maybe this is the best move, to simply move the knight, allow our queen to be taken, put the knight on the rim, is dim, but for a turn or two, it's okay to leave the knight on the edge of the board. So let's prepare that maneuver. Oh, I see. We may hang our bishop at the end of the line, so let's be careful here that we aren't hanging anything at the end of this line. Knight retreats, queen takes, knight recaptures, and we would lose our bishop on this square. Alright, we don't want to lose our bishop. So how do we preserve the bishop? Well, I don't see. Let's attack the queen for now and try to get that queen to move positioning. And then we'll figure out how we can save our bishop. Perhaps we should have jumped the knight in. Probably a better move, a little more aggressive, but we got a rook to the open file. This feels fine. Many things hanging in this position. What will the opponent choose to do to relieve this tension? Alright, they retreat. So if I were to retreat the knight, they were to capture with the queen, we recapture and lose the bishop, we take the rook at the end of this line. Another idea would be to bring the rook in and attack the queen. 2 minutes left, running out of time. Can't calculate such things, so let's go with the first option where if we lose the rook, if we lose the bishop, my mistake, we will recapture the rook. If the queen is taken, recapture with the knight. Opponent takes the queen, expecting knight to take bishop on d3, but maybe opponent sees that there's a tactic. Let's wait for the opponent to have a little think. A castle looks good in this position. Castle looks very good in this position, and if the knight takes, we would take the rook. The knight could recapture the rook after we castle. So something to consider there. Alright, the rook moves. The rook moves. Should we hop in with the knight? No, let us move the bishop because it's hanging, attacking the rook, and if the knight captures, we will recapture with our knight. This castle still is very desirable. Alright, opponent goes with this line, so we will recapture with the knight. And preparing to castle. Preparing a nice, calm castle here. Bishop exerting a lot of pressure over the dark squares. Alright, opponent moves the knight up. We could take the knight with check. Let's go ahead and just take the dark square bishop. If recaptures with rook, then we can recapture, and that would be a blunder for the opponent. Still looking for a castle here. Castle looks very good. 1 minute 45 seconds to 5 minutes and 20 seconds for the opponent. Our opponent is from Finland. I'm led to believe they eat a lot of fish and maybe reindeer. Would have to look that up, but I believe I've heard that about Finnish people eating reindeer. Alright, the knight wants to move into one of these dark squares. So let's just restrict the knight's movement. 1 minute 30 seconds. We're going to push the pace. It would be nice to get the knight from being attacked, but where does our knight redirect to? Alright, opponent attacks our pawn in the middle. Let's get the knight out. Let's begin that process of redirecting our knight. Maybe we can find a better square. If we want to trade rooks, it would be nice to get the rook down to f8. Let's go ahead and make that rook trade. The rook is pinned to the king, therefore it cannot take the knight. And the only way to defend the rook would be to bring the king closer. So if I were to take the rook, the king would attack both the knight and the rook. Opponent thinking here. 4 minutes left. Position's getting a little more clarity. All right, let's go ahead. Do we take? Yes, let's go ahead and take. Surely this is better for us. Then we will defend our knight with a pawn while attacking the opponent's knight. Opponent likely has to bring the knight back. Well, opponent goes for a weird tactic, so we're just going to take the knight. And if anything but a check, we provide our own check. I'm expecting a check. We'll move. Our rook's defended. And we'll intermezzo into a check. We'll check the king with the knight, running out of time, but we may have an outpost here. Maybe the knight comes forward. Let's go ahead and bring the knight forward. Make sure our pieces are defended. It would be wise to put a pawn onto this knight. We may lose the h-pawn. Looking to get our rook activated. All right, opponent attacks. Let's move forward in the position. Bishop nicely defended by our knight. All right, attacking two of our pawns. Let's go ahead and get the rook involved in the game and then try to convert this advantage with the knights. It felt like there was considerable pressure on our position, but now the turntables. Alright, there's no time to lollygag, so we're going to try to move quickly here. Now we're putting a threat on the rook. Oh, bishop would have been very nice. This would have been a very classy move. Alas, let's get all our pieces in the game. Then we'll look to push the pawns, get everything on happy squares. Alright, push the pawn here. A4 coming next. And we'll just calmly maneuver in the middle of the board. Let's keep everything nice. Alright, pawn push forward. We'll check the king. Alright, let's get the rook to an open file. We have to move the king, give way for the bishop to come in. How does the knight begin the hopping process? Ah, did I miss? Okay, opponent blundered the rook. I seem to have missed this. 20 seconds, no time to play. And it looks like the opponent's position is going to collapse, so we're going to begin the pre-move operations. Operation pre-move to victory. Make everything defended. And this king cannot make progress. I want to avoid a stalemate here. So as we get closer to the king, we're going to stop our pre-moves. Alright, opponent is thinking. And we have 4 pre-moves on the board. The h-pawn. Harry is going to march up. Do we want to make Harry a queen? I believe so. Again, gotta avoid these stalemates. Very careful. Probably looking to sacrifice the rook. Alright, opponent resigns. And we get the win. Vishwanathan Anand says we made 2 great moves. 15 of the best and 16 excellent moves. You won with a nice tactic. Let's look at it together. Says the chess.com bot. Alright, and we'll simply go to our analysis. We had a mate in 3. If anyone wants to pause the video and find mate in 3, here's your opportunity. I wonder if it's so simple. Well, this is mate in 4. Couldn't find the mate in 3. Found the mate in 4. And the queen and knight deliver a mate. So let's go look through that game. Alright, we did our 1b3 maneuver. Attacking the center. Opponent comes out very principled, equalizing the position, building their defenses along the dark squares. We continue our plan. Unleash the bishop, and we are counterattacked by the light squared bishop in kind. Now we could mirror this position somewhat, but alas, we choose to attack the bishop, and this is all fine. Opponent retreats, and this is when we lose the advantage we may have had from the retreating bishop. Is g4 the move? No, g4 was not the move, so there's a way to take advantage of this bishop. I'm not exactly sure how, but the engine wants the light squared bishop to get onto f2. Perhaps we're planning a sacrifice. Hard to say. Perhaps the opponent does a developing move. Would we then push the pawn? I'm not sure. Peter wants us to strike the center. Either move is good for us, but alas, we did not see this on the board, and we chose c4 in this position. Opponent moves the f-pawn, f5, little mirror move on the opposite side of the board. And we calmly push to d4. We're trying to alleviate the tension here. Our queen is being attacked by this bishop. It's pinned. Maybe it makes more sense to get the knight out. Engine prefers the knight. Just develop the pieces and we'll figure out where we're going. Just a little bit worried about the pawn push, because if this knight were to move away, we would lose the queen. We saw that in the game and we counterstruck, so actually the engine likes that. So let's see what happened. d3, pawn forward, and we counterstrike the bishop with g5. Pawn takes, and a fatal error. We have blundered the knight. I think the opponent makes a mistake by not taking this knight. We clearly blundered this piece, but they show mercy, and they push the pawn, resulting in a +4 position. The reason being, this capture comes with a check. They were pinning our queen, but now we've turned the tables, and we're able to take with a check. Okay, pawn blocks. So we must retreat the queen, and in the game we discussed 2 squares. Alright, would have been better to go to the other square. We were afraid of getting attacked by the knight. We thought maybe, okay, queen comes to g4, then knight will come out to f6, putting pressure on the queen, also defending the pawn that we're looking at capturing. Ah, I see. Maybe the computer just wants this juicy move that I failed to see during the game, queen d6. Yes, computer loves it. And if you block with the bishop, well, queen checks, get the king out the center. Queen checks, the king back onto its starting square. Now it can no longer castle, and then we would take with the bishop. Ah, I didn't see this during the game, but it makes total sense in the analysis. Makes total sense. That's strong dark square bishop, and of course this bishop is pinned, so cannot recapture. Devastating position. Opponent has gifted us with a blunder early, despite our blunder before the opponent's. And we don't find the correct continuation. Instead, he hits us with the intermezzo of the pawn, and here once more we thought, do we recapture with the queen, or do we recapture with the king? If we recapture with the queen, advantage is fine, but in the game, we saw king takes. And there's not much of a change in the evaluation bar either way. Actually, it's going back up to just the same. The knight hops in. Do we take the knight? Well, we didn't take the knight. And the computer says it's just fine whether we did or didn't. Still about plus 2.5 to plus 3 evaluation. Now this is scary. The king's in the center. The queen's attacking. Knight's getting ready to potentially jump in or help deliver checkmate with the queen. But maybe it's just not enough pieces. Too many pieces on the starting squares for our opponents. So we push the king over. Not the best move. Still having an advantage. Pawn takes. King retreats. Only square. Getting dangerously close to checkmate here, but we have the advantage if we can only find it. Retake the pawn. And our knight gets attacked. Oh, where to move the knight? Well, we had to think because we felt like during the game, if the knight were to retreat, then there may be a tactic in which the knight can take. So even though we take the queen, they recapture. Just to illustrate on the board. But this is nothing to fear. Our advantage remains. Instead, we move the rook, and this is a blunder. All the advantage is lost at this point of the game, and it seems we're out of the opening phase, moving into the middle game. We need to connect our rooks. Opponent, once again, with these 3 pieces on starting squares. At the 1250 level, it's hard to believe that this is how people play, yet here we are. Queen retreats, they don't take advantage. Because they didn't take advantage, we're able to retreat the knight, get the queen trade, and what's more, we trade another set of pieces in the knight and bishop, and the opponent blunders here, thinking that we would retake the knight, not realizing there's a juicier target that's double attacked, the bishop. He reroutes the knight, accepting the loss. Advantage at +7 for white. Didn't feel like +7 in the game, but it felt good at this point in time. Just a matter of freeing the knight. Pawn move to restrict the movement of this knight, and if it were to go forward, we would attack it again, most likely. Most likely. There's protection on the square, so the knight cannot easily hop in. Alright, then we see d5 by our opponent. Trying to muddy the waters, complicate the position. We're going to ignore this, get our knight to safety, and prepare to trade the rooks. Knight is attacked, so let's prepare to trade the rooks. This rook is pinned. Alright, double attack on the knight. Let's diffuse some of the tension. Simply defend the knight. Opponent makes a curious choice here. And they move the rook as opposed to getting the knight to safety. So because they move the rook, we're able to take the knight. Rook checks. King moves, but our rook is defended. So black rook retreats. And we take an intermezzo before hopping our knight into check and and beginning to convert our advantage. Knights move backwards, so this bishop, it's all safe. Alright. And we have to defend our pawn. We don't want to lose pawn and give any complications here to where the opponent can begin to march down the board. Well, that would be a nightmare. And so we check. And we reroute the knight to the center, attacking the rook. Rook attacks our bishop, so we save it. Rook retreats. Pawn defends knight. And now the king slides over from the rook's attack. We have a mate in 2 here. Does anyone see the mate in 2 here? I'll give you a few seconds. Alright, nobody found the mate in 2. Well, I'll admit I failed to see the mate in 2 myself. So how would we do this? Move the bishop? No, because the rook would just sacrifice for it. Ah, I see the fatal mistake, and we missed this during the game. We missed this during the game. You simply take the rook. Wow, what a move. So much pressure on all the squares around the king. The king has to go forward and would get pawn mated. Surprising. A little pawn mate action here. Good puzzle. Good puzzle indeed. So once again, does anyone see the mates? King would have to move forward, and there would be a pawn mate on a4. Very good. Unavoidable. Hard to believe. We missed that in the game. We carry on our plan. Take the rook back. And now it is a simple matter of conversion. Can we convert this advantage? Consolidate everything to the center. Make sure everything is defended. And then begin hunting the pawns so we can make our own pawns promoted into queens and checkmate the king. Well, the opponent resigns here. We have a mate in 3 on the board, and we get a resignation from our opponent. They fought hard, and we have to give them credit. 51 move game. Well, on 52, move 52, the opponent resigned. There we'll see it. We had a few great moves, had a couple of the best moves, and even more excellent ones. Well, a single more excellent. And that's the game. So appreciate you for tuning in. I hope this was relaxing and meditative for you, and you can have a worry-free existence, as you are perfect as you are.